What if the future isn't waiting ahead, but blooming in your mind already? What if your thoughts aren't mere echoes of experience, but seeds of possibility folded into the unseen structure of reality? Before we unfold this hidden architecture, like and share this journey with fellow minds and subscribe to keep your vision open. This is where the veils begin to lift. The world has trained thought to walk in lines. A to B, premise to conclusion, step after step, logic after logic, chained within the symmetry of cause and effect. Yet beneath this mechanical elegance hums a different order, non-linear, intangible, deeply alive. The quantum field does not walk. It flickers, folds, and leaps. It does not trace history. It touches infinite futures at once. Quantum thinking begins when the mind ceases to move like a machine and starts to resonate like a wave. We are not taught to think with uncertainty. We are not invited to dwell in superposition, where contradiction does not dissolve clarity, but enriches it. We are conditioned to choose, to collapse the world into one outcome, one path, one interpretation. But beneath the skin of matter, particles dwell in mystery, in shimmering multiplicity. So too can human thought. To think quantumly is to become porous to the unseen, to entertain what is not yet probable, to perceive the faint signature of the possible even when it trembles on the edge of silence. This is not belief, it is awareness. This is not imagination, it is access. To awaken the latent self is not to dream, but to observe deeply, to stand in the field and know that by observation, reality reshapes itself. The mind, like the quantum field, can entangle. Thoughts entangle across time, across distance, across minds. We speak of synchronicity like myth, yet quantum entanglement is its underlying signature. Two particles, two thoughts, sharing one unseen thread, not bound by location, not bound by logic, but bound by a secret harmony that pulses beneath perception. Human potential does not expand through accumulation, but through coherence. When the fragmented self aligns, when the internal observer becomes aware of its power to direct. Consciousness is not a mirror. It is not passive, it is participatory. It dips into the field and calls forth form. And just as particles remain waves until observed, so too do our lives remain possibilities until we choose with precision, with depth, with intention. Quantum thinking is the sacred act of attention, not mere focus but refined presence, clear enough to shift probability. When we speak of potential, we often mean ability, capacity, skill. But true potential is the dance of being with what could be. It is the knowing that every moment is a doorway not just to action, but to another version of self, another layer of reality. The future is not linear. It is not waiting. It is sensitive. It is entangled with the mind that reaches toward it. Quantum thinking is not a method. It is a tuning, a state, a frequency that lets the individual begin to perceive from the inside out rather than the outside in. We are taught to look at the world and respond. But quantum awareness reverses this posture. It invites us to look within and observe how the world rearranges itself in reflection. Thought, in its most coherent state, is a field generator. It carries resonance, and resonance changes the field. The quantum thinker does not merely analyze. The quantum thinker attunes. Possibility is not potential until it is seen with presence. Time is not a river, but a cloud of doors. Action is not cause, but invitation. To step into this new cognitive space is to become not merely human, but transhuman. An evolutionary leap not of technology, but of internal clarity. The future is coded in this awareness. The next frontier is not space. It is the space between thoughts, the silence charged with patterns waiting to collapse into form. There is no edge to thought when it is tuned to the wave. No limit to intelligence when it surrenders to uncertainty. No ceiling to growth when identity becomes fluid. The quantum mind moves not through control, but coherence. Not through force, but frequency. As we rise toward this threshold, we must leave behind the structures that defined thinking in centuries past. The Cartesian cage, the Newtonian scaffold, the mechanical metaphor. In their place, we find the shimmering mapless terrain of the possible, alive, conscious, and waiting to be met with reverence. This is not mysticism dressed in science. It is the science that has begun to awaken to its own mystery. The particle is not separate from the field. The thought is not separate from the self, and the self is not separate from the universe that dreamed it. Quantum thinking is not a belief system. It is the next form of cognition. There is a rhythm beneath all appearances, not the rhythm of clocks or planets, but of unfolding probability, of presence stirring form into being. In this rhythm, human thought is no longer a shadow cast by the brain. It is the vibration that precedes it, a whisper in the field made visible through the dance of particles and waveforms. The future is already listening. Every intention hums in the lattice of space. Every silent desire leaves an imprint on the yet to come. To think quantumly is to think without walls. It is to think as if boundaries are illusions, as if the skin of the world is transparent and everything once separate is now part of a flowing, interactive whole. Thought ceases to be personal. It becomes participatory. It enters the equation of existence like a variable, shaping outcomes through silent influence. The world doesn't happen to the thinker. The thinker happens to the world. When two particles become entangled, distance dissolves. Communication becomes instantaneous, unbound by time or separation. The same entanglement ripples through human experience, not just in coincidence or intuition, but in shared visions, creative fusion, the sudden knowing that arrives uninvited yet precise. The old view calls it chance. The deeper view recognizes entanglement. Quantum thinking is the art of recognizing the invisible thread and weaving with it. What if the self is not fixed but oscillating? Not a noun but a waveform, rising and collapsing with every moment of attention. Identity becomes a choice made in the field. Memory is not a library of the past, but a map of possible trajectories. And the mind, when untethered from static thought, becomes a field in resonance with the cosmos. Every problem is a frequency. Every solution is a reconfiguration of wave patterns. We've been taught to solve with logic, to deconstruct and analyze until only fragments remain. But fragmentation never leads to wholeness. The quantum thinker does not cut reality into parts but tunes it into harmony. The question is no longer what is the solution, but what is the frequency of the outcome I desire? In the silence of the deep mind, possibilities begin to shimmer. Not fantasies, but parallel futures, real as breath, waiting for coherence, to collapse them into experience. Most will pass unnoticed. But to the attuned mind, one can be chosen, not forced, not pulled, but tuned into like a radio wave. In this light, the future is not something one walks toward. It is something one synchronizes with. This is not a metaphor. This is physics. Every atom sings, every cell vibrates. The body is an instrument tuned by thought, and thought is modulated by attention. The inner world is not an echo of the outer. It is the source from which the outer takes shape. Every revolution in human history began not with action, but with a shift in perception. Now perception is ready to leap once more, from the visible to the potential, from the measurable to the mysterious. We have trained the mind to look outward for certainty, for proof, for permission. But the quantum field gives no such luxury. It offers only possibility, only mirrored probability. It does not grant power to the passive, but to the precise. Attention becomes the new engine. Intention becomes the sculptor of the invisible. Potential does not live in content, but in structure. The arrangement of thought, the coherence of energy, the integrity of attention, these are the foundations of creation. Not effort, but alignment. Not repetition, but resonance. The future bends not to ambition, but to attunement. To awaken into quantum thinking is to exit the trap of reaction, to no longer see life as a sequence of problems to solve, but as an infinite field of outcomes waiting to be selected. The self, when observed without judgment, becomes elastic. The world, when touched with reverence, becomes malleable. Reality, when no longer held as fixed, becomes intimate. In this unfolding, the mind becomes a bridge, not between facts, but between dimensions, between what is and what could be. The thinker becomes a navigator, not of knowledge, but of possibilities, not a seeker of answers, but a tuner of frequencies. Here, consciousness evolves not through accumulation, but through refinement, like a crystal vibrating more clearly with every layer shed. We begin to feel what the old paradigms could not explain. That thought is not limited to the skull, that perception is not passive reception, that creativity is not invention, but translation, from wave to form, from field to flesh. The ancient mystics touched this unknowingly. The quantum mind arrives knowingly, and from this knowing, a new human is born. Not with wings, not with technology fused to skin, but with perception liberated from linearity. Not through control, but through communion. Not through dominance, but through coherence with the field. The mind is not a container, it is a conductor, and the field is waiting. There is a structure beneath awareness, not built of matter, but of motion. Not sculpted by time, but held in timelessness, echoing through the corridors of choice. This structure is subtle, like the vibration that precedes a sound, the shimmer that precedes a vision. It does not announce itself, it whispers, and quantum thought listens, not with ears, but with the entire being, alert to shifts, to alignments, to unseen invitations from reality itself. In the heart of this awareness lies the truth. Every decision begins long before it is made. What seems like spontaneity is often resonance. What feels like intuition is the echo of coherence found in a deeper dimension. The classical mind believes in cause and effect, in steps and sequences, in the straight line from reason to result. But the quantum mind sees something else. A field of branching paths, each vibrating with its own frequency, each accessible not by logic, but by alignment. The self is not a single voice. It is a harmonic chorus of potentials, each one capable of expression, each one waiting to be tuned into presence. To walk the path of the quantum thinker is not to sharpen a single identity, but to become fluid, shifting between inner geometries, collapsing into form what once was just a pulse in the unknown. It is in stillness that this architecture reveals itself. Not the stillness of passivity, but the stillness of precision, the focused awareness that ceases to chase and begins to receive. Reality does not need to be forced. It is already responsive, but it responds not to struggle but to structure, to internal coherence, to the purity of signal the mind emits when it becomes unified. Every thought carries a signature. Some are scattered, diffused by conflict and doubt. Others are sharp, clear, and resonant. The future listens only to the coherent ones. In this world of wave and field, clarity is causation. A coherent mind bends space. A coherent self influences probability, not with noise but with signal, not with volume, but with resonance. And this is the secret rarely spoken, the most powerful. Transformations are often silent. They do not shout or erupt. They unfold. They unfold because the conditions become right, not externally, but internally. The quantum thinker becomes an architect not of actions, but of internal space, arranging thought like sacred geometry, shaping the field from within. What emerges from this practice is not certainty, but intimacy with uncertainty, a dance with the unknown, unafraid. For the quantum mind, uncertainty is not a threat. It is the wellspring of all evolution. It is the space from which the new is born. It is the only place where potential breathes. Linear thought closes, quantum thought opens. Where one seeks conclusion, the other seeks emergence. Where one defines, the other allows. And through this allowing, entirely new structures begin to arise. Ways of seeing, of sensing, of participating in life not as observer or actor, but as field, as frequency, as subtle force. We are not taught to think like this. We are taught to define, to label, to fix things in place. But every label is a collapse, every definition a boundary. The field, however, has no edges. It offers experience without closure, meaning without formality, knowledge without finality. In this space, wisdom arises, not as information, but as orientation, a knowing of how to move, not what to know, a clarity in the dark, not a light that dispels it. This is the future of cognition, not faster machines or sharper intellects, but awakened presence, not synthetic augmentation, but natural unfolding. The future of human potential lies not in what we can hold, but in what we can release, the rigidity, the control, the fear of not knowing. For what the quantum field asks is simple. Can you let go enough to be transformed? The quantum thinker does not command the field. They commune with it. They learn to listen not just with the mind, but with the body, the breath, the subtle sense that knows when something is in alignment long before it can be justified. The intellect follows, the field leads. This is not regression into instinct. It is progression into a finer intelligence, an embodied clarity that moves in stillness and acts through resonance. Possibility becomes reality not through effort, but through congruence. And congruence is the gift of inner harmony, the alignment between thought, emotion, energy, and action. When these are no longer fragmented, when they form a single wave, the field responds. The unseen architecture begins to take shape in the visible world. This is not belief. It is not magic. It is not wishful projection. It is the nature of a universe made not of things, but of relations, not of objects, but of patterns. And in those patterns, consciousness is both participant and designer. To think quantumly is not to reject the rational. It is to nest it inside a greater logic, the logic of emergence, of resonance, of non-local influence, a logic where paradox is no longer contradiction, but insight, where complexity does not obscure, but reveals the richness of invisible order. The world is not waiting to be discovered. It is waiting to be remembered by the mind that no longer walks the line, but rides the wave. Within the body of the universe, the human mind is not an isolated spark, but a tuned receiver, an ancient instrument designed to perceive and participate in the cosmic song. In the age of the quantum mind, we remember this design, not as a metaphor, but as function, not as poetry, but as structure. The field does not speak in words or signs, it speaks in resonance. And the thinker becomes a listener first, a translator second, a creator only after all else is in tune. The world once appeared as a static canvas, matter obeying motion, energy following strict paths, future chained to past. But the canvas is now observed to be fluid, trembling, awake. Reality is not a backdrop but a participant. The observer is not a part, but integral. Every choice sends ripples. Every thought introduces interference patterns into the great field. The shift is not philosophical, it is ontological. The human being is no longer a machine inside a mechanism. It is a field within a greater field, an echo of the invisible, sculpting and being sculpted by attention. Perception is the gateway, not perception as passive sight, but as luminous engagement. To see something is to alter its configuration. To expect an outcome is to nudge the field in that direction. To dwell in a frequency of despair is to resonate with timelines that reflect it. To align with vision, with clarity, with beauty, is to weave those strands into the fabric of what becomes. The quantum thinker becomes aware of this fabric, not as fiction, but as a living code. A pattern of light moving beneath the surface of appearance. Thought no longer orbits around objects. It flows between energies. Time loses its tyranny. Identity dissolves its need for singularity. What remains is presence, aware, fluid, precise. Here, manifestation ceases to be myth. It becomes alignment. Not the pulling of reality into form by force of will, but the tuning of self until one becomes indistinguishable from the desired pattern. Like a violin string vibrating with a note before the bow touches it. like a star forming from dust drawn together by resonance, not pressure. To manifest is not to summon. It is to meet the version of self that already lives the future, and through resonance become that self now. All futures exist in potential. All versions of you are coded into the field. But only the coherent signal unlocks them. Only the thinker refined by silence, stillness, and attention can stand in the corridor where these futures begin to collapse into now. The ancient mind knew fragments. The quantum mind knows wholeness. It does not divide life into categories, inner and outer, thought and world, self and other. These boundaries are illusions. The field is seamless. Influence flows in both directions. The universe is not reacting, it is dancing. In this state of coherence, emotion transforms into current, thought into structure, intention into architecture. The inner instrument plays without effort, not because it avoids complexity, but because it trusts the field. Trust is not passivity. It is a refined awareness of interdependence, where the mind becomes light enough to float on the quantum winds, yet precise enough to direct them. In classical thought, intelligence is control. In quantum thought, intelligence is coherence, a state where the parts no longer fight for attention, but align with clarity. The thinker no longer needs to solve reality. They need to listen deeply, enough to co-create it. The question is no longer, what should I do, but who must I become to align with what I seek? This shift in question changes everything, from striving to tuning, from resistance to receptivity, from construction to emergence. The self becomes not a fortress, but a prism, not a container, but a lens. Consciousness does not need to be filled, it needs to be focused. And through focus, the field is carved into form. To think quantumly is to let thought become lighter than identity, more fluid than logic, more responsive than habit. It is the rewilding of perception, the softening of boundaries until one begins to hear the field in silence, to see the patterns in stillness, to move not through plans, but through inner signal. Potential is not something you reach, it is something you remember. Buried beneath conditioned thought, beneath expectation and tradition, it waits. Not asleep, but quiet, waiting for a frequency pure enough to awaken it, waiting for a thinker who no longer resists paradox but dances with it, who no longer seeks control but communion. This is the evolution of mind, not toward complexity but toward subtlety, not toward dominance but toward transparency. The future belongs not to those who master the machine, but to those who become lucid within the field. They will think, with time, not in it. They will speak not to be heard, but to harmonize. They will live not from memory, but from the moment the wave becomes real. They will not be thinkers, but transmitters. Not creators, but rememberers of the future. There is a threshold that cannot be crossed with thought alone. No blueprint guides the way. No doctrine maps the terrain. It is not reached through logic or inherited truths, but through a subtle transmutation, when the mind, tuned beyond concept, becomes the frequency it once sought. Beyond questions and answers lies vibration. Beyond striving and understanding lies coherence. In this state, the thinker does not simply imagine the future, they become it. To live as quantum thought is to shed the density of personal narrative, to release the inertia of cause and effect. The self is no longer defined by history or repetition, but by presence in the field, no longer bound by the linearity of I was and I will be, but rooted in the ever-emerging I am becoming. The past fades into pattern, the future becomes a mirror. The only anchor is now, sculpted by resonance and choice. The quantum field holds every version of reality, not as speculation but as encoded geometry, waiting to be attuned. There is no fate, no finality, only a vast architecture of branching outcomes, vibrating silently across invisible dimensions. Thought becomes a compass, emotion becomes an engine, and the thinker, coherent and still, becomes the point of collapse where possibility becomes presence. This is the transformation of human potential, not the pursuit of power, but the refinement of perception. The future does not reward noise. It rewards clarity. A clear mind bends time. A coherent being alters space, not by force but by frequency, not by declaring but by becoming. What does it mean to become a frequency? It means to live in such harmony with a chosen state of being, that the field reflects it as experience, to walk as the healed before the healing arrives, to think as the visionary before the vision forms, to feel as the expanded before the expansion is visible. This is not fantasy. This is instruction. The field is precise. It mirrors not want, but resonance. And so the work of the quantum thinker is inner tuning, refinement of attention, purification of intention. It is less about doing and more about unlayering, less about control and more about signal strength. When fear dissipates, clarity rises. When doubt quiets, intuition speaks. When separation falls away, the mind becomes the field it once studied. Every human is a transmitter. Most simply forget. They are broadcasting. Their thoughts wander, their energy fragments, their signal weakens. But when one becomes deliberate, when thought, emotion, body, and breath begin to vibrate as one, reality shifts. Not metaphorically, structurally. The field is alive. Not mystical, but mathematical. Every particle dances according to invisible instructions, subtle, recursive, fractal. You are not outside of this design. You are its node, its nexus. The thoughts you refine echo outward. The emotions you embody shape local geometries. The clarity you cultivate builds scaffolds in time. And if you truly see, if you become still enough to witness without distortion, you begin to sense what few ever glimpse, that you are not moving through life. Life is moving through you. That you are not the mind thinking, but the field thinking. Through form, that you are not a figure against the universe, but a frequency within it, rising and fading, dancing its part in the whole. The future of human potential is not technological, it is vibrational. Machines will extend hands, but coherence will elevate minds. Artificial intelligence may replicate thought, but only awakened consciousness can resonate with the field. And it is resonance, not intelligence, that unlocks the corridors of time. True power is not predictive, it is participatory. It does not impose, it harmonizes. It listens until the moment sings its direction. It aligns until the wave collapses into form. It rests in stillness until action becomes inevitable. From this stillness, a new human arises. One who knows that transformation is not an event, but a tuning. One who understands that the body is a waveform, the heart a compass, the mind a mirror. One who no longer seeks reality, but chooses it with presence, with clarity, with coherence. The human of the quantum age is not more, but less divided, less distracted, less distant from the source. They speak less, but their presence resonates further. They do less, but their signal alters more. They are not future-bound, but future-born, appearing now in frequency, waiting to be recognized. You are not here to chase what is next. You are here to become it. So let the field hear you. Think with coherence, feel with precision, move with intention. Become the frequency of the future. If this journey opened a space within you, share it. Let others feel the resonance. Like, share, and subscribe to help spread this signal. And together, awaken the next evolution of thought.